Really scared, to be honest with you. Right when I sent the first 10 grand, I was like, I said a Hail Mary, and I said, please God, don't let somebody take my 10 grand away. But it was pretty stressful when the first, even though it's, I could afford to lose it. Nobody wants to lose 10 grand, right? I think before coming in, I was, completely unaware of the opportunity. And so I was looking at, quite honestly, I had a few friends that are doing real estate. So I had reached out to them about how they're, buying buildings, apartment complexes, retail shops, stuff like that. I've had a couple of real estate agents. Kind of, they would call me when they would see a building come up, and hey, if you're interested, here's one apartment complex, and so I was just completely open to different ideas, but primarily focused on real estate just because that seemed to be the easiest path to tax deductions. And I would say, kind of my initial position was, just completely unaware of the opportunities.
Okay. What were you unable to do that you wish you could have done before you met me?
I wish I could have done this 5 years ago, right? I think I've had disposable income for a bit, and I've just maxed out my 401k. I've kind of have financial investments on the side, and I've always kept a lot of too much money in savings that I think is just kind of a wasted opportunities that I've continued to have until I got to a point where once I start paying six figures in taxes, I was like, okay, this is insanity, right? Keep doing the same thing and thinking that something's gonna get better. I was like, okay, got to do something different. So I wish I would have started sooner, even if I would have started like in the 31,000, 50,000 range, and really started the ball rolling. But yeah.
How did you find my company?
Almost embarrassed to say, but I found it on TikTok. And so once they find your pattern, and I was getting a lot of real estate stuff, a lot of investment, retirement. I'm depending on how happy I am working, because I really, really enjoy what I do. So I'm thinking 5 to 10 years is my horizon. And my wife is eligible in 3 years, so I can certainly stop working in 3 years. But I'm thinking 5 to 10. I have a project that's going to take us about 5 years to build. It's probably and so I'm super excited about staying here long enough to get that built out. And so I'm not planning on leaving anytime soon, just because it's enjoyable and it's high stress, high pressure, but it's still fun. And so I started looking at, okay, if I'm in a 5-year window, then I need to really start planning for the future.
You said you're embarrassed. What was your thought process going through my funnel?
I was really scared, to be honest with you. Right when I sent the first 10 grand, I was like, I said a Hail Mary, and I said, please God, don't let somebody take my 10 grand away. But and the reality is I could afford to lose it, right? I mean, I wasn't stressed out. I think the cashier at the bank was more stressed out than I was. So like, are you sure? They asked me like 50 questions. You know how many people get scammed? I was like, can you please send this freaking money? Like I was entertaining their questions, right? And I was like, but after about 15 minutes, I was like, okay, that's enough. Like you see how much money I have in the bank. 10 grand isn't gonna break me, right? Like, it's embarrassing to say, but I have like savings, which is ridiculous. That I'm not, I was moving, 25, 50 at a time into kind of a mutual fund that I have another individual that's managing for me. And so it had just been a while. I wanted to do something. I wanted to give down payment to buy a building, buy a business. I really thought this was the year. I was going to try to do it last year, but I figured, I really have to find some form of depreciation that I can use as a tax shield. And so I stopped throwing the money into the mutual fund and say, okay, I need to keep a couple $100,000 in case I need a down payment for, a couple $1 million building or something, right? And so Yeah, it was pretty stressful when the first, even though it's, I could afford to lose it, nobody wants to lose 10 grand, right? And um, so yeah, I think that was probably the scariest part of the transaction.
Tell me what this is actually really informative to me. So I'm like curious because I can only imagine being on your side, but I try to make it as like professional and legit and show you guys I'm like a real business, right? But like what were those doubts and fears going through your mind other than I was a fraud and I was going to take your money?
No, I mean, I think it was just more the fact that I found it on TikTok, right? If I would have been Googling it now, well, I would have came across it, or YouTubing it. For some reason, it just seems more legit. But yeah, just going through TikTok and the fact that there's so much misinformation in there, and so um, just really saw that as an opportunity. And then I think the difference was being able to have this face-to-face conversation, if you will, through video, and seeing kind of the person that's actually responsible for doing the work. I think that gave me a better sense of peace, right? That okay, this is legit. We're gonna be able to do something with this.
What made you say yes?
This the video, right? Being able to have that conversation with the person responsible for the company, and not talking to kind of a financial analyst that it's gonna because I've been talking to retirement analysts and everybody tells you the same thing, and you're just like, you know what? It's just I think it personalized it, right? That you were willing to get on a call and you're obviously very successful, and this is important to you, at least important enough for you to be personally involved. So I think that was the difference maker.
So you're going to save 113,000, a little bit more. Plus you're getting a refund of 85. So you're almost at 200,000. Talk about that. How does that make you feel knowing that you're getting almost a down payment for a commercial building?
Yeah, I mean, and it'll probably feel better when I go and do my taxes next year, but it's definitely um, it's gonna allow me to do what I want to do post retirement, right? And quite honestly, I'm thinking about starting other businesses. I'm not really thinking about I'm gonna retire and just kind of disengage from life. There's things that I want to do. I've always wanted to start my own business, and I could have veteran, and I have a lot of pretty strong business background. I think there's a lot of opportunities here, and so yeah, so I think this is really the launching point for kind of what I'm going to be able to do post retirement.
So you're going to take that money and you're going to invest it in a new business,
Yeah.
maybe some real estate, because you'll have enough. So cool. What would you tell someone? I'm curious, like my brain is going because you're very forthright and I love it. Most people are much more reserved.
Yeah.
What would you tell someone who's watching my sales funnel that's unsure about taking the next step? What would you, if you had to go back and tell your earlier self, what would you tell them?
I would say just do a little bit of research, right? I think once I got into Google and I was able to see, because quite honestly, I didn't know anything about you as a person, right? I didn't know about the HGTV thing, and so I think like those where you have more to lose, being kind of somebody that's well known in the industry. You have more to lose than I do, quite honestly, is the way I saw it, right? And I think that's what allowed me to take the next step. And so once you do some research and you see the different companies, the different skill sets you have to offer, then the money's not, I'm not throwing in $50 million, right? To where I'm like, holy smokes, this is going to be something that's could be catastrophic to my future, right? And so I think the combination of the fact that once there's a lot of history on the internet, there's that if somebody wants to do some research, and the fact that the entry point is reasonable, right? Even at $500,000, I know people don't have $500,000 sitting around, but there's $30,000 opportunities, $50,000 opportunities. So there's and I've talked to a couple of friends, and yeah, I told them, let me see how this works, and once I start seeing the dividends and I start seeing kind of the tax benefits, if they're interested, then definitely I would recommend. And they're doing a couple of the same things, right? Looking at a little bit of real estate, a little bit of how do I start a business, and so definitely once I can show them my kind of my experience, at least get through the next tax year, and then definitely we'll be recommending this opportunity to others.
Awesome. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you want to say that maybe you want to share?
No, I'm looking forward to it, right? And so and kind of the conversation I've had with my wife, right, is whether you win or lose, at least you have a fighting chance, right? I don't have a fighting chance with the government not paying taxes, right? So I'm gonna pay them regardless, but at least this gives us a fighting chance to say, hey, can we make a little bit of money? Can we save a little bit of money? Can we put ourselves in a different financial position for retirement?